All right, well, good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. So again, just thanks to Gord Tulloch, did our beginner session, and very appreciative of that. And we'll get started. The next thing here is I'm just going to welcome everyone to the RASC Winnipeg's evening start monthly meeting. Shortly, I'll go through the announcement. Then tonight, presenting what's up is Bryan Stach. What's new is Dr. Michelle Boyce. Tonight, we're also going to be presenting a strategic plan overview by Ed Wright. We'll take a short break. We'll have 2 breakout rooms tonight. We have one just for social to gather, and then one for anybody who's got some questions on the strategic plan. Our main presenter tonight is Dr. Ed Cloutis from the University of Winnipeg. And he works at the University of Winnipeg's planetary spectrophotometer facility. Unfortunately, Mark Wachowski, our second speaker tonight, is not going to be able to get to join us. And then we'll close off as usual with our virtual get-together. For those that are online, you don't need to sign back in because we're in the meeting format, and it would just continue on from this point forward at the end of the meeting. So just updates on a few things. This is a notice on the bylaws. I want people to understand that the final copy is on the website and will be voted on at the December meeting. There will be a notice go out for that to be a special meeting of the membership in December, and it'll be a vote on the bylaws that we've drafted, and then we'll go from there. Mission, vision, and values are also available on the website in the member section. The final version is now posted, and again, that will become part of our strategic plan as we move forward. Mentor program is working. Judy has managed to pair up probably 12 people, and we're volunteers to be mentors, as well as anybody who's looking to be paired up with somebody to become a mentor. Light pollution abatement work with NCC continues. The Wilderness Challenge Youth Outreach Scout Camp is on September 29th. There is information on the forum. It will be run only a day event now. So we're looking for some more volunteers if they can come out and help us, even just to stand at the table and tell people a little bit about the RASC. And for that, any of the things we're asking for volunteers, don't worry if you're new and you feel like you don't know anything. Come on out, join us, have some fun. And we get to share our passion for the astronomy science with the rest of the public. Another event that public outreach event that we're planning to participate in is teepees and telescopes, and that's from October 5th to 7th. And again, there'll be a sign up and more information coming out on the forum on the website. We have officially struck the finance and observatory committees. We have some members on those. If you'd like to work on either one of those, please contact one of us on the council, and we'll take your information and share it. The St. Malo Spring event. At the last council meeting, we approved the concept to try and have a spring event similar to Sprucewood Star Party. Now, the plan right now is to do it in the last weekend in April. And one of the things to keep in mind out there, we'll have the park to ourselves, so there shouldn't be any anything to disturb us. And potentially there are cabins nearby. Gord Tulloch tells us literally within walking distance of the fields that we'll be using. So we could stay in cabins for the overnight to offset some of the cooler temperatures in April for those who are not quite ready to do spring camping. Again, this year, Council is supporting the concept of doing telescopes for kids holiday giveaway. So if you are interested in supporting this very worthwhile endeavor, please let the executive know so we can gather if you have a telescope you'd like to donate, or some other thing, or some eyepieces, or anything that would give a gift of astronomy to a child during the holidays. That would be wonderful. Sprucewood Star Party, what can I say? It was this past weekend, and it was incredible. Sylvia and her team of merry makers, and Mr. Diablo was out there to keep us in line, so there was no white lights, and it was just an absolutely awesome event. It was wonderful because we had this huge field. We were able to maintain our 6 feet distancing for COVID protocols, and we just had an absolutely wonderful time with excellent weather. So there should be some more pictures in that coming out shortly. And again, highly recommend that if you ever want to have a lot of fun, come on out to these events. Tonight, again, we'll have breakout rooms. Just going to mention that the merchandise store, it's been set up that where you'll be able to go and purchase RASC Winnipeg Center merchandise. Now, this is a new endeavor for us. The way it works is that you order something and you'll only get one of them. So this is a new way for us to do this, and we're just hoping that everybody, if you do buy through the store, is you give the council a little bit of feedback on the quality and did you get what you're looking for, just so we can monitor it. Last thing I want to mention tonight is we're looking for a meeting coordinator, primarily for our monthly meetings. And the purpose of the meeting coordinator is they're just the one that's going to make sure that all the speakers have the information of when the meeting is. They gather it together. They will run the meeting in behind, and just overall coordination. So again, thank you everyone for coming, and we'll move on to our next slide. And again, members observing night is scheduled for tomorrow night, and they will start at 8:30. For anyone who hasn't got, who has not been out to Glenlee yet, if you go to the forum, there's directions there, and in the last Winnicentrics, there's a map on how to get there as well. So we look forward to you. It's a good time to come out. If you're new, we can help you with some stuff. And even if you're a member of the club for a long time, come on out and maybe work on one of those certificates that the RASC has for us to work on. Things like Explore the Universe or your Moon certificate would be a lot of fun. All right, so our next speaker is going to be Bryan Stach. Bryan is our past president, and Bryan will be starting as soon as I shut down my sharing here. Stop sharing. So please welcome Bryan Stach.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. I'll be doing the What's Up for September 2021. I'm going to just share my screen for a second. There we go. Okay, so what's up for September 21? Okay, Dennis, you can see that?
Yep, we can see your screen.
Okay, good, because I'm not using the multi-screen anymore. Okay, so what's up for September? So let's get started. I'm going to start off with the planets, and for this month, it looks very promising. We have Jupiter and Saturn, and some people over the star party was trying to lock onto Neptune. Jupiter and Saturn is in a prime position for viewing, especially for this month. Right after dark, you'll be able to see Jupiter and Saturn close together. Unfortunately, Mars would not be observable this month due to it being behind the sun. Venus would be quite low in the twilight, but still observable, but unfortunately, Mercury will not. All right, moving right along. I like to present this slide here because it looks, a lot of new members like this, and it just kind of like gives you a glance where everything is in relation to us and the planets. You can see Jupiter and Saturn. Can I use my mouse? Yes, I can. All right, because we got Saturn here, we got Jupiter and Neptune. That's why it makes it a prime position for viewing these planets right here. Neptune would be a little challenging for some people. A lot of people use their go-to telescopes for that. As you can see, Mars is behind the sun and Venus is right at the twilight right here. Looking from another point of view, we have here again Jupiter and just high enough for everyone to see. And over the star party, I was able to see the shadow of Iowa, I believe. Someone showed me. So again, that star party was something. I get to see Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune a little bit. And of course, it's always great together to hang out with some of the members and get to know some of them. Okay, moving right along. Okay, what do we have for events? Not much really, except for the zodiacal lights that's visible right now. But unfortunately, it's in the morning twilight. Just before the twilight, the zodiacal light should be visible. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. The new moon was on the 6th. On September the 17th, we do have the Jupiter, Saturn, and Moon forming a large triangular. September the 20th is the full moon, and of course, September 22nd is the fall equinox. All right, so on September the 17th, sorry, as you can see here, we have Jupiter and Saturn forming a nice little triangular here. This was roughly what 11 o'clock at night. So again, it's something to have a look at. Next, just a little something. If you're new and you're just a beginner for zodiacal lights, they're a little bigger than the Milky Way. They're brighter than the Milky Way, but I do have a picture of exactly what I mean by it. They're quite nice. If you haven't seen it, it took me a while though to actually notice it. Like I was with a couple friends in Arizona, and it took me a while to say, oh, okay, it's bigger than what you expect. And this is just an example of what it looks like. This is shot in Arizona. You can see it's kind of like a pyramid effect. So, and it's apparently the main line would be the elliptical of the sun. So it's quite nice. So just remember, it's at the morning twilight, unfortunately. Next time it would be in the evening, but for now it's in the morning twilight, just before the twilight. All right, next, this is something I shot. Again, this is something that's happening this month. It's a really good opportunity to see the Milky Way. Why? Because it's actually split the sky right in half. When you look at one end, it goes directly above, over you, and to the other end towards the north. So this is a good time to actually see the Milky Way. Again, this is at the Star Party. The people in front of you, I don't know if you can see it, those was Jerry's final tour that we had. It was an excellent tour every year. And you can see the Milky Way is quite bright. And of course, you'll be able to see it quite easily with the naked eye. All right, so the forecast. Let's talk a little bit about the forecast for the next 14 days. As you can see here, the yellow represents during the day. The blue represents the evening. So you can see on Tuesday next week, on the 21st, it gets pretty chilly around 6, but most part of it, it looks like it's going to be quite warm for us. We're observing. But when it comes to the clouds, okay, let's have a look at the clouds coverage. In one forecast, basically the next 6 days, we're looking at partly cloudy days, partly cloudy nights, sorry. No real precipitation in the beginning of it, but as you can see here, if you look at the graph here, you can see these peaks here. This represents the number of clouds. So on Tuesday, September the 14th, actually none of it really looks good other than Saturday between 12 in the morning after 12 a.m. and Friday the 17th, around Friday the 17th, we're looking at probably after 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning would probably be a good time for you to do some observing. But unfortunately, cloud coverage, it doesn't look too promising for the next couple of weeks. But again, that could all change. This is just a forecast. All right, I think that concludes everything for what's up in the night sky. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Does anybody have any questions for Brian before I move on? All right. Then our next speaker up is What's New, Dr. Michelle Boyce, who's a regular presenter for us and an avid user of her scope whenever she can. Please welcome Dr. Michelle Boyce.
Just give me a second. Just trying to find the right screen here.
Yep, we can see you.
Yes, I have 3 screens. I'm trying to choose the correct one because PowerPoint likes to show up on them. Okay, so I'll try that. And
we can see your
okay.
screen.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so there are so many subjects out there that I kind of just have to randomly choose things. Sometimes I choose a theme. So this one has a bit of a theme. So I'm going to talk a bit about planetary formation and some theories. So the first one is that apparently our solar system is not if you take into account, like you try to model the solar system in terms of all the planets and what's left around in the Oort cloud and Kuiper belt and asteroid belts and stuff, there's not really enough material left around to describe what's formed in terms of modeling. So the question is, where has all that leftover debris come from? So here we have Travis and Harrison who say, well, maybe what happened is that these collisions that build up the inner planets, for example, they are so energetic that a lot of the material gets vaporized into small or atomized into small bits that can easily escape the solar system. So that's the theory they have. However, it gets a bit confusing because then if we look at another recent idea is we have these new objects that seem to be coming from interstellar space. Oumuamua and Borisov are two examples. In fact, I think the only two examples I know of, which makes this model a bit far-fetched, but it does put some constraints on things. So the idea here is that, again, if we look at the protoplanetary disks of our solar system or other systems, there doesn't seem to be enough material in the end to explain the formation, as if it's all thrown away. In this case, they're trying to say, well, how much of that material is creating these objects that we see? And so from these two or very few observations, they estimate that 2 to 50% of a host star mass is used up in creating these objects. So they're spit out. So there's about 9,000 Oumuamua or Oumuamua type objects, actually Oumuamua and larger type objects ejected per star, and roughly 5 to 10 rogue planets per star. So that's their model. So there seems to be a bit of a contradiction. And basically, if we look at the formation of our solar system, what we have here is somewhere in some interstellar cloud, you have this gas that condenses and forms this disk, which eventually gives us our solar system. So somewhere on the order of 1 billion years ago, our solar system was kind of chaotic. And that's what's shown at the beginning here is this protoplanetary formation and some material being ejected off the disk, which is interesting because it's also very similar to accretion disks for black holes, although a lot less energetic. And so in this phase here, before the, let's just say late heavy bombardment, not hate heavy bombardment. So in the early solar system, the idea is that there's so much material around, it's hitting each other, and they're knocking out these large objects, such as a Oumuamua-sized object. There was some months ago where I also mentioned they hypothesized that this was part of some massive collision. So when it first came out, there was a bunch of theories as to its origin. So now they're saying that maybe quite a large of the mass of these systems is being ejected, up to 2 to 50%, creating all these objects out there. Then the other theory I mentioned, there's still these objects being ejected, but around the late heavy bombardment, which is when everything started to settle down and our solar system became more stable, there was less objects. This is where they hypothesized that a lot of stuff was vaporized and ejected out of the system. So we have two theories here, and I believe the first one is more applicable to the earlier solar system formation, and then the one is for later. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. And then every now and then I sort of try to keep track of some of the probes out there. And of course, the most exciting one at the moment is Perseverance. And on August 5th, it tried to get a core sample, but the ground was so powdery that when they put the sample in the holder, they realized it was empty. So on their second attempt, it basically used, they would drill the hole and they actually inspected it with one of the cameras. So they brought it up to a camera, looked at it, said, okay, there's some stuff in there. And then they did some testing and then sealed it, checked it with a camera before putting it away on September 7th. So they finally got their first successful sample, core sample on September 1st. So they drilled into this more solid rock instead of the ground itself. Oops, come on. So there were quite a few images up, so I picked two interesting images. So this is an image taken by Hubble, a very recent image. And it's of a globular cluster, which is basically a densely packed cluster of thousands to millions of stars, and they're really, really old. So basically no metal in them. Metal type stars are created after second generation stars. So when these stars explode, their core contains more metal from the production of a conversion of helium and of hydrogen to helium to iron. And then that ends up in a stellar nursery and then produces stars which have a higher metallurgicity to them. So these things are really, really old objects. This one is NGC 6717. It's 23,000 light years away in Sagittarius, discovered by William Herschel on August 7th, 1784. And then finally, the last image I have here is an image of Centaurus A captured by the dark energy camera. And it's actually a very large camera. It's a 4-meter camera. And it takes in the 400 to 1,000 nanometer range. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So that crosses the visible range. So what you see here is Sagittarius A. These are dust lanes, and then there's a very bright source in the middle. They theorized that this was a collision between a large elliptical and relatively smaller spiral galaxy. And this is a well-studied galaxy. In fact, they know there's a black hole engine in here. And if you take pictures in the radio and X-ray, you'll find that there's really large extended structures coming out of here. Especially in the X-ray, you'll see hot glowing gas up here and down here. So you'll actually see the structure, and in the radio structure, you'll see filaments and so forth. So this was discovered by James Dunlap, April 29th, 1826. Okay, and that's all I have for today. And yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Michelle?
That's a picture from Perseverance.
Our friend the Martian.
Someone I figured didn't know. Someone noticed.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Michelle Boyce.
Okay. Okay. I guess there's no questions. So
yeah.
Right. Oh, I should stop sharing.
Thank you.
Do you want me to just get going there, Dennis?
Yeah, I'm just going to introduce you. So our next speaker now is Ed Wright. Ed is our Secretary of the Council, and he's the one that also helped lead the working group through the strategic plan overview. And Ed's going to talk about that and give everybody a look. And please welcome Ed Wright.
Great. Thanks very much, Dennis. I'm just going to share my screen. Just give me a minute here. This will work. Hang on. There. Okay. Just make sure that's working. Okay. Cross your fingers. There we go. Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yes, thanks. Thanks very much, Dennis. And yes, I'm the secretary of RASC Winnipeg Center. Dennis used the term lead the strategic planning group. I'd rather call it facilitating. We were, a group of 4 or 5 people, very dedicated to put together the strategic plan. And I just want to take the opportunity while I'm speaking here just to thank everybody on the committee. I think we did a bang up job. I mean, there's still a bit more to go in terms of operationalizing it, but we have a very solid document, a very solid plan. So, and I just wanted to thank everybody in the membership for listening in. We wanted to make the membership as aware as possible about the strategic plan, and also to request feedback, as far as what's in the plan. So what I'm going to do is I'll talk through the plan, and I've reserved some time at the end of the presentation, a few minutes for questions and answers. And so this will be 20-25 minutes. I shamelessly made the promise in the invite that it would be as painless as possible, so I'll try and stick to that. So just before I get into the strategic plan, I just want to talk about where are we today as an organization. So this slide talks about some of the pros and cons of where we are today. So right off the hop, we as the committee, we can say we are exceptional. There's many exceptional things about our organization. We have dozens of amazing loyal members that contribute their time and expertise for our various programs. And there's a list there of some of the programs, sort of the main ones. This is a monthly meeting. This is an example. There's a lot of public outreach that is done by some very knowledgeable senior members in the membership. We have the Winnicentrics newsletter. Spruce Woods, Dennis mentioned that earlier. I believe there's 2 events there. The last one was just actually last weekend, and it was a great event. We have the Loner Telescope gear program, which is great. And we've got a new mentorship program that is just being started up. There are a few other programs, but I just wanted to mention those, that those are some outstanding ones. The second bullet there is just, some of the amazing things that we do. And I know, Dennis, I think you kind of stole my thunder a little bit on that, but that's okay. We did do a telescope giveaway last holiday season. And that was to 2 needy families with children that were interested in astronomy. So I think that's a very, do good kind of activity that we as an organization did. We have a strong social media presence. We have our website, our RASC Winnipeg website, and we have Facebook pages that we support, and we are looking at other media that we can grow into in the future. And we do have a growing membership. We actually have 235 members at last count, so that's awesome. And our members come from Winnipeg and the surrounding area primarily, so it's actually an awesome number. So that's all good. However, there are problems. And the way that we're describing this is a refresh of the organization, that is really needed to address some of these major issues. So you can read that there, that we have too few volunteers, and there are some who are some volunteers that do an awesome job and actually have taken on a number of different roles. And my thanks out to them, actually, to all the volunteers. But there are some that are shouldering quite a bit of the work. Glen Lee Observatory. So it actually has 2 sort of overall issues. The equipment in Glen Lee is becoming out of date, so it's a technology obsolescence type thing that's gradually been occurring. And then the actual infrastructure there is very gradually over time being deteriorating, which is true of any building or buildings. So we have those two things going on that need to be addressed. We have low revenues. So in spite of the low revenues, it's actually less than $5,000 a year in revenue. It's amazing what we've been able to do with, within that envelope of money that comes into the organization. But certainly that is something that, could be addressed. And finally, our legal structure, what I would describe as an immature legal structure. We are currently not incorporated. We are essentially a group of cooperating individuals, friends, working together. But the problem is that that is an impediment to our growth. And I'll talk a bit more about that in another slide. But one of the big issues with not being incorporated is that it restricts the funding that we can actually get. There's a swath of funding organizations out there that will not fund non-incorporated organizations. So that's something that needs to be addressed. Just go to the next slide. So I want to talk about the strategic planning process. And just before I do that, I want to ask the question, why do we plan? Some of you, may be familiar with, may be in an organization that's done a strategic plan before. Some, it may be a new concept, but it is a form of planning. And some like it, some don't. One of the comments I have is that, to the best of our knowledge, our organization has never had a strategic plan. Now, it could be that there was one done in the past, but we don't know about it. But the organization itself is actually over 100 years old. We actually, believe it or not, we have records dating back from the early 20th century, like 1910, like kind of that time frame. Over that time, strategic planning was not done. So why do organizations do strategic planning? Well, the main reasons are that it improves the focus of an organization. It really helps define what the organization is all about and where it's going. And when it does that, the strategic planning process improves the focus that people are able to have to work together. So it's all about working together. In fact, there have been business studies that have been done. There's a couple out of the US. One showed that, and this was on nonprofit organizations. We're, of course, a nonprofit. Nonprofit organizations is the more value, the more effective a nonprofit organization is, the more value it will report getting from strategic planning. Another study of companies found that strategic planning has the highest satisfaction amongst common management tools. So these are academic studies. It's been proven in the past that strategic planning, it's kind of like what I like to call the Buckley's mixture. It tastes bad, but it works. And the reason it tastes bad, sometimes there's negatives against it. One is it takes a lot of work to do a strategic plan. And number two, it's the execution of it after. After you have the plan, it's operationalizing it, actually doing what's in the plan. But the best way to look at it is that by planning, we're being proactive. If we're not planning, we're not being proactive, and then we become reactive. So a plan allows us to address issues that take a number of years to address. That's the big reason, is it allows us to plan things over a number of years. If we don't plan, then we're reactive, and we're just not going to be anywhere near as effective. One last comment on this is that because there has been no strategic plan done, we had to do it all from scratch. So it was quite a bit of work. So you might ask why 4 sane individuals spent a good chunk of their late winter and spring working, something like 18 or 20 meetings that we did for this. And that's the reason, is because it is actually very important to the future of the organization. So on the slide here, you can see the council struck a strategic planning committee that met regularly throughout the first half of 2021. The second bullet there is about where the data was coming from. So we did several avenues into different stakeholder groups. We did a membership survey, so I'm sure most of you saw the survey earlier this year. And thank you to those of you that participated in that. We did focus groups with the council, and we did focus group with the long-term senior members, people that have been with the organization for quite a while, major contributors to the organization, and got their feedback. So, I feel that we did a good broad swath of stakeholder input. So based on the feedback that we got, one of the standard kind of tools in strategic planning is the SWOT analysis. So SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's exactly what it says. And so we did a SWOT analysis. We drafted the mission, vision, and value statement for the center. And I've got a slide on that, a couple of slides down, and Dennis had mentioned that before. And then we went through the relatively long task of analyzing our current program offerings. And when we did that, we determined, what was viable, what was good, what needed to expand or enhance. There's probably one in there that I can recall that, need to make sure it's doing well or consider withdrawing it. But anyway, that was actually a large part of the overall project to do that. So this slide talks about needs. So one of the most important things in doing strategic planning is to really understand what the needs are that the organization is there to satisfy. So when we did this, it really distilled down into three main needs that our organization satisfies or attempts to satisfy. Number one, astronomers, so these are beginner, all the way from beginner up to professional astronomers, need a place in the local community to share learning, expertise, and enjoyment of astronomy. So it's for astronomers, whether, no matter what level. The second one is that the public needs a better appreciation and understanding of astronomy. So that's what our public outreach is all about. It's to give a better appreciation, to satisfy the need that the public has to better understand astronomy and enjoy astronomy, and for us to help facilitate that. The third bullet is really an internal thing, and this is actually about us as an organization internally being able to run efficiently and effectively. And again, this goes back to maturity. The more mature we are as an organization, the better that we'll be able to run. It's communication, it's processes and tracking progress and all of that. And the strategic plan is a large part of that. So, but this is a very important slide. It talks about what the needs are that we have, that we satisfy as an organization. So let's talk about the mission, vision, and values. So a mission statement is really a statement of the purpose of the organization. So the first bullet is verbatim the mission statement that we've agreed on. And I just want to say that this has bounced sort of within the strategic planning committee, and then it's also being reviewed with council. So it has bounced around quite a bit. It's being reviewed. It is not yet set in stone. We are welcoming comments on this, but I just want you to know that this has been discussed quite a bit. So our mission is to share our learning, expertise, and enjoyment of astronomy with each other and the public to build lasting relationships and to stimulate interest in astronomy and related sciences. So you can see in there, it's all about relationships. It's about interest. It's about learning, expertise, and of course, all surrounding astronomy and related sciences. The vision is about where we see the organization needing to go. So the statement is to create a community that shares astronomy as a common experience of everyday life and learning. So this is a kind of a subtle statement in that when you read this, it's like, what does this really mean? What it really means is to expand upon where we are today, to make astronomy, to make it more ubiquitous into the community around us and in our membership. So it's really to expand on what we've already done today, very simply stated. Finally, the value statement. So what values are, they're the how. They're the how are we going to do this? And so we have 6 value statements there. You can read those. So, we value integrity, honesty, and transparency. We endeavor to communicate meaningful information. We value and recognize the contribution of our volunteers, and that's going to be a recurring theme that we hear in the rest of the presentation. We value diversity and strive to create an inclusive environment. We strive to remove barriers for our community to access our services. And finally, we are inclusive of all experience levels in astronomy and related sciences, from the novice, which is pretty much where I am, up to the professional. I'm just going to move to the next slide. So again, just to try and make this presentation as painless as possible, we have taken what is in our, primarily in our program development work that we did, and really have distilled it down into a number of nuggets that we have that came out of that. And these are in 3 slides here. So these are essentially the core strategies that we're looking at. So the first one is drafting bylaws, getting approval from national, and then opening up to the membership for feedback and input, and then getting it ratified by council on the membership. So this is a ball that's already in motion. We do have the draft bylaws. They are with national now, and the reason they are with national is that we must always remember that Winnipeg Centre is, an offshoot of RASC National. So we always need to make sure that our bylaws, fit within what they require for bylaws. So this is kind of a check that they need to do. The second bullet there is to incorporate the center to permit fundraising through grants and center operation as a corporate entity. So I've talked about that. There's some examples there of what it would allow us to do. Acquire property. There's no plans today to do that, but it's just an FYI that in the future, if that ever became necessary, it would allow the organization to do that. Have a credit card. Again, no plans for that today, but it's something that we could do. Again, this is all part of a maturing organization initiative that we're trying to do here. The third bullet is on the committees. So you heard Dennis earlier, he spoke about finance committee and I believe an observatory committee. So the nominating committee that's listed there, we already have a nominating committee, and what this is saying is just to expand that committee a bit more from what it is. But finance and observatory, those are 2 new committees that we are forming. And then the executive committee, that is the president, vice president, secretary, and the treasurer. And that is standard process for an organization to have that executive committee. Finally, on this slide, implement a process for long-term planning by a regular review and update of the strategic plan. So it's a matter of continuing this process, probably, every 2 years, something like that. We would want to renew the strategic plan. And I can almost promise that it will not be anywhere near as much work as this go around was. So that's good news. Just the second slide on core strategies, just continuing on here. Create an active mentorship program. So that's really being done. It's it's in flight. Judy is the interim coordinator for the mentorship program, and thank you to Judy for doing that. This talks about synergizing that with the high demand loaner scope program and then the beginner session program. So you can look at this as kind of a 3-legged stool. When a new learner comes in, wants to get a mentor, they may not have their own equipment. So we also have a loaner scope program that immediately can be brought in to lend them some equipment for a time. And also we have the beginner session programs that can actually for everybody kind of teach people on how to use the equipment, some of the basics in astronomy and the equipment, and just such as what Gord did this evening with the German equatorial mount. Second bullet is upgrade Glenn Lee. So talk to kind of high level about this. This gives a little bit more detail about what's being discussed. So the dome itself is getting kind of old, and we're looking at, should that be upgraded or renovated or whatever. Same with the warm room, the pad. There's been discussion about expanding that or improving it. The big one there is internet access. That's a big handicap right now out at Glenlee. There is no specific internet access other than by your cell phone. So that's something that we hope to address. And then the second sub-bullet there is on the wish list is remote access to the equipment out there. And so 20 years ago, that would have been, not that easily done, but, we're now, 2021 and the technology has evolved and actually, it could be possible to do that. So that is on our list. The third bullet there is Glenlee is becoming, it is getting a little bit of light pollution. So there is consideration being given to, should we consider another dark sky site? Just moving along, third bullet there, Sprucewood Star Party, which we spoke about. Just some ideas there, opening it to other RASC members across Canada, and perhaps planning additional events out there. Next bullet, improve the way we recognize volunteers. And again, that's an ongoing theme that we really need to improve the way that we engage with volunteers and show our appreciation for what they're doing. And the last bullet talks about that as well. It's all about helping manage them and motivate volunteers and having them enjoy what they're doing with us. Just go on to the last slide for the core strategies. So finally, just to talk about the last few nuggets here that came out of our program review. It's enhanced the community of people who contribute to our newsletter. Right now, there is some over allocation of people where we're understaffed. We've got people wearing multiple hats, and Gord Tulloch is the jack of all trades. He's probably the main example of that, but a number of us do have a number of things that we do. Expand the marketing of membership programs. Enhance the mentorship for outreach activities. So again, that's hand in glove with the mentorship program. Coordinate outreach by having an active calendar of regular and ad hoc events. So this is a way of improving the process that we use and improve the service essentially that we're able to provide to our members and to our volunteers. So to actually track volunteer participation. And again, that will allow us to better show appreciation for our volunteers. And finally, distribute Winnicentrics more widely to the public and third-party partners. So just before I leave the core strategies, the comment there is that we will be sending out a link to this PowerPoint after the meeting, probably tomorrow. So if anybody out there wants to get more details on what's in the programs, you can go to the backup slides in this presentation. I think there's about 7, 8, 9 of them, something like that. So there's more detail, sort of an intermediate detail. If you want really a lot of detail, there's also a link into the actual strategic plan document. So let's talk about implications. I'm trying to move along here. I'm sorry if I hope I'm not too far over time. Just implications to actually do what our vision is here. Well, we need a higher level of engagement by members of council so work is evenly distributed. So that's more of an internal thing on council to just make sure that we're distributing the work effectively. But more than that, going to the second bullet, it's recruiting members for particular activities who have specific skills. And there's just an example there, for the finance committee. As an example, it's obvious it would be good to have people with accounting and finance skills. It's an area that we're weak in today, and it will become more important to the organization in the future. And then last, again, it's about volunteers. It's how to engage with volunteers. We need to know how to resource projects so that very few people are not left doing the large part of the work. So it's making sure that we distribute the work. So the immediate needs that we have right now, so this talks about the organizational roles that have been identified in the strategic plan. And you can read those there. So finance committee, we mentioned that. The observatory committee, there's also a need for volunteers for work parties. And I just want to mention there that Somebody can be on the observatory committee and not necessarily have to be on a work party, and vice versa. You know, we can get people on a work party, but they don't have to be on a committee, or they could, you know, do both. There's the webmaster and co-webmaster. We do have Gord as the webmaster today, but again, it's kind of understaffed. It would be helpful if we had somebody, you know, willing to step up to the plate on that one. Nominating committee, again, that's an existing committee, but again, we could use more people involved. Fundraising, there's, how do I put this? There's been a bit of a discussion / debate over, you know, do we need a coordinator for that? But definitely fundraising is going to be important in the future. Loaner scope coordinator, Abdul had been doing that. He's stepping out of that and going on to the membership coordination. He's also our treasurer, and then just an overall coordinator of volunteers. So going on, you'll be happy to know we're almost to the end. So now that I've hopefully gotten your attention and just an understanding of the strategic plan, we also wanted to take this opportunity to really talk about, you know, if you're interested, if those of you out there listening, if some of you are interested in saying, yeah, I'd kind of like to help out. It sounds like a really good, you know, a good opportunity. It sounds like a good thing to do. Well, we want in this meeting to make it possible for you, you know, right here, right now, to actually go in and volunteer for, you know, some of these positions. So, you know, where are we again today? You know, we're uniquely positioned to be a driving force in promoting astronomy in Manitoba. But we do need a stronger base of volunteer support to mature the organization to the next level. And so what are the benefits? You know, it's better volunteer recognition and satisfaction, improved programming for our members, upgraded Glen Lee Observatory, which, you know, we really consider that's really our crown jewel. And so we need to make sure that we protect it and we grow it and we use it. You know, better, solid financial support. And finally, improved longevity of our organization, which you could say, you know, Ed, how come you're saying longevity when we're over 100 years old? Well, I guess what's meant by that is, yes, we will continue to survive as an organization, but it's really about the longevity of our programs and making sure that, you know, we have enough momentum behind them and also enough energy to actually expand them and make them better. So, because if we don't do that, then you know, things can get smaller and you know, be less effective. So anyway, that's what we're asking for, and we're just starting the recruiting process today. And so, as I said, I'll be sending the presentation out, and there will be a link in to the form. I just want to show you that here real briefly, and I'm sorry, I hope I'm not too far over time. When you go in, for those of you that are interested in volunteering, we do a lot of stuff in Google Docs, and this is what you'll actually see. It's a Google document, and you just go through, fill out your information, your contact information, and then there's questions on each of the roles. And for example, this is the volunteer coordinator role. Each time it will ask you for knowledge and experience. I want to how would I put that? Put that in perspective to say that, you know, we absolutely understand that it would be rare that somebody would walk into any of these roles with all the right experience. But if you have some experience with the role and need to grow into the role, that is perfectly okay. We're sort of expecting that. So don't feel that you have to be 100% for the role. It's more, I think, a matter of interest. So I don't have a picture of a cat, but we have this as the final slide. There is the link in here to the strategic plan that you can also go in and look at the document. It is a lengthy document, but again, in our defense, we had to build it from the ground up. It was a lot of work, so there, it's a lot of detail. I'll just mention too, like if you continue on, there are these backup slides, and you can go in and actually look at the programs. Okay, so that's it for my presentation. I think I've gone way over. Dennis, do we have time for questions, or should we leave that for the breakout room?
No, we can take a couple minutes for questions, and then we'll move.
Okay.
Hey, Ed, it's Wing.
Hi.
I have question. In your planning and preparation for the strategic plan, what a scan of similar organizations to RASC Winnipeg Center locally that can be used as a benchmark for a success?
That's a very good question. Personally, I know I've been on several different boards in my career, like volunteer boards, and so I've been able to use that. And actually, my wife is on a good nonprofit as well. And Gord Tulloch he's had experience on several organizations. I don't know about the rest of them. But I don't believe there was a formal kind of reach out to other organizations to look at how they are being run. But again, I personally myself, I have experience on several organizations. I don't know, Gord, Judy, Bryan, any comments on that question?
I think we talked about it. We couldn't really establish anybody who does the kind of diverse things that we do. Not easily. So we did talk about it early on.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Wing. I don't know if that really answered it, but does anybody else have any other questions out there? I'm just going to stop sharing my screen.
Maybe I'll ask one more question. Is
Okay.
there a marketing committee?
No.
No, there isn't.
Or like a marketing / membership committee, you know?
There's a membership coordinator that takes care of a lot of the marketing to the installed base and to members who have expired. That's a new position that just got kicked off fairly recently. And obviously, the cheapest people to market to are people who have already belonged to the club and expired. So that's the primary mechanism that you would call marketing. Of course, the fact that we do a lot of outreach is also marketing. So we don't have a formal position related to marketing. It's just entrenched in a lot of the activities we do externally, and then internally we've got the membership coordinator. And Abdul has taken that role on. I was doing it as my hat number 6, and thank you, Abdul, for taking that on.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that as well. I totally agree. The marketing role is entrenched in what we're doing today, so there isn't a separate role for that. The fundraising role as well. I mean, one of the purposes of marketing, of course, is to generate revenue. It's certainly not the only reason. So, but that if depending on how that unfolds, the fundraising coordination, however that is done, that would also be part of what would be marketing. So,
And Dennis I'm just going to jump in here too. The bylaws as they're drafted allow us to put in committees as we see fit. And I just want to say during the strategic planning process, a specific marketing committee or individual wasn't identified. So we can just keep that in mind. And again, because it's strategic planning document, it's meant to be a living document. As we go down this road, if we feel that we need a marketing committee, then that can easily be set up and run. So it's simply a motion by council to strike a committee, provided, again, like everything that's in the strategic plan, we have volunteers to do the work. So are there any other questions? Because we should do a few minutes in a breakout room. All right, Ed, do you want to set up the 2 breakout rooms now?
yes, I will do that. And I just want to give a word of warning to everybody out there. I'm just going to stop my video. This is my first time in running the organization's Zoom. So I have tried to practice this, but hopefully it will work. So sign on there. Just give me a minute. So here we go. Okay. Okay. So I just kind of like when you see the old Western and they've got a picture about over top of the piano, and it says don't shoot the piano player. So please be patient with me. Okay, so what we had in the agenda is we've got a breakout room for social and a breakout room for strategic plan. So the strategic plan one would be, sorry, okay, and I'm just gonna, go ahead.
So Ed, I'm just going to tell everybody we're going to do it for about 10 minutes and start with Ed Cloutis. So just keep that in mind. In 10 minutes, the rooms will close down automatically, and then we'll begin with Ed Cloutis, who is our guest speaker, Dr. Ed Cloutis.
Yeah.
Okay, Ed, do you want to activate the rooms, please?
Yeah, I will. Okay, just going. Okay, I hope this. Yeah, okay, this should work. Okay, here we go. Cross your fingers. Okay, you should be able to choose your room now. Do you see, did something pop up on your screen saying choose a room?
Yes.
Just to invite social.
Social, did you also get strategic?
No, just social.
Okay.
If you can't start a second one, then we'll just all join on the social.
Okay.
Mine says Ed is inviting you to join strategic.
Oh, you should.
So this is like the 5-year plan from the Soviet Union, and you're picking who's going to join what.
I'm not trying to do that. Okay.
Looks like I'm stuck with joining the strategic plan too, because in my thing just said I was invited to the strategic plan only so far.
Actually, if you dismiss that invitation,
Okay.
you could. Oh, it disappeared. But I had the breakout room icon in my client, and when I clicked on that, I could join whichever room I can. But you just took it out.
Oh, okay. All right. So let me. Okay. Sorry, we're just closing that.
I haven't been able to start my video and you can't see my picture. The host is
Okay, we're kind of stuck here. Just hang on. Okay, so I'm going to, I'll open all the rooms. Okay, you should be able to choose your room.
we were
Okay,
just kicked out of that room.
Okay, I'm going to try it again. I'll try it again. Okay, here we
Well,
go.
Ed, we've run out of time. So,
Okay, all right.
that's,
All right. I'm sorry, everyone.
No problem.
Okay, all right.
So just we'll just close down the rooms, close all the rooms.
It's
Yeah.
actually, it turned out to be social and not
It turned
strategic
out-
planning.
Okay, all
If
right.
anybody has any questions about the strategic plan, the members of the group were Ed, myself, Judy, and Bryan, and ex officio Dennis. So any of us, if you want to send us questions, we can answer them or pass them along.
All right. So, all right, everyone, welcome back from our short breakout rooms. And tonight I would like to introduce our guest speaker for tonight is Dr. Ed Cloutis, and he is the director of the University of Winnipeg Center for Terrestrial and Planetary Exploration. He is also professor in the Department of Geography. He has over 25 years of experience in exploring the planetary bodies in the solar system using various Earth-based telescopes and spacecraft. Please welcome Dr. Ed Cloutis.
Thanks, Dennis, and good evening, everyone. Hopefully this will go better than the breakout rooms. So fingers crossed. And maybe to avoid confusion, I can be the other Ed so I don't get confused with Ed Wright. So I will, Dennis, maybe I'll try to share my screen from this end. Yep, I think that'll work. Oops, let's see what's going on.
And we can see your screen, Ed.
Excellent. Okay, I will put it on slideshow and okay, here we go. So you're seeing the full screen view then?
That is correct.
Good. Okay, well, again, good evening, everyone, and thanks to Dennis and folks at RASC for inviting me to talk about some of the work that I'm doing here at the University of Winnipeg. So as Dennis mentioned, I'm a professor in the Department of Geography at U of W, And I'm going to just provide an overview of some of the work that's going on here at U of W and in Winnipeg concerning various activities that we're involved with a number of planetary missions. So I won't go into a long and involved history of the facility, but this is this research facility I have at the University of Winnipeg has been going on, sort of building it up since about 2000 and probably 2003. So this has been a long effort, and it's really starting to pay some dividends to us in terms of being able to participate in a number of planetary missions. So some of the major research themes that we're involved in, the main one is exploring the surfaces of planets. That's really, I guess, our bread and butter in terms of what we do. We also do a little bit of work on characterizing the dust in the atmosphere of Mars in collaboration with colleagues in Europe. We do some work here in Manitoba, actually, at what we call analog sites, which are places where there is some characteristic, usually geological, that has some relevance to the Moon and Mars. And so it gives us an opportunity to try out different techniques for exploring planetary surfaces. It gives us opportunities to train up students in rover and mission operations. And within our facility, we have laboratory, we have what we call environment chambers that allow us to simulate the surfaces of various planetary bodies. And so we can simulate, for instance, the surface conditions on Mars. We can simulate the sort of the vacuum environment of asteroids and the Moon. And then the last thing I'll touch on is just some of the spacecraft missions that we're involved with here at Winnipeg. So let's jump in here. So in terms of planetary surface composition, right now we're really, especially in the case of Mars, we're really driven by looking for signs of life, either past or present life on Mars. So that focus, that's the current focus, and it's kind of moved away from earlier focus, which was finding signs of water on Mars, which we've confirmed, and also determining if Mars ever was habitable. So those questions have kind of been addressed by previous missions. And so now we're shifting more towards, given that Mars was habitable, given that there was liquid water on the surface of Mars, those are conditions that we think are necessary for life. And so now we're switching our focus to looking for signs of life. And so, for instance, the Perseverance rover that Michelle showed earlier, it's really the science instruments on there are really designed to help us look for signs of life on Mars, whether past or present. The picture that you're seeing there on the upper right is the family of Mars rovers. So in the foreground, you can see the Pathfinder rover. And then in the upper left there, it's Spirit and Opportunity. And on the right is Perseverance. So you can see that we're getting better at sending larger spacecraft with more science instruments to Mars, which means that we can explore the surface of Mars much, much more effectively. And so part of what we're doing here is testing out different instruments in Mars-like environments to see what instrument or combination of instruments is the best for detecting signs of past or present life. And then hopefully we can use those instruments and those lessons to help us explore Mars more effectively. We also do some work on asteroids because their importance is in terms of, we think that asteroids and comets would deliver a lot of the essential molecules for kickstarting life on Earth. And so by exploring asteroids and comets, we can again get some insights into how complex would organic synthesis or organic chemistry have been out in space. So in other words, how close would we get to the molecules essential for life in space? And those molecules would then be delivered to the Earth by the impact of comets and asteroids. So some of the main projects or missions that we're involved with, we are part of the Curiosity and Perseverance rover science team. So we get access to all that data, and we participate in not only data analysis, but a number of my students are also involved in day-to-day mission operations. So that's a pretty exciting and unique opportunity, and I know they're thrilled to have that opportunity. We're also working with the European Space Agency ExoMars Orbiter, and that is designed to look for signs of life, mostly by analyzing the composition of the atmosphere. So we can look for trace gases that might be indicative of biological processes. We're also part of the ExoMars rover. That's the European rover that is scheduled to launch to Mars next year. So we'll be involved in 2 active rovers, Perseverance and the ExoMars, the Rosalind Franklin rover. We're also, in terms of, I mentioned, looking at prebiotic chemistry, we are co-investigators on the OSIRIS-REx mission, which is bringing a sample of an asteroid back to Earth, and that will arrive here in 2023, September, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. We also have a couple of missions that I'll talk about to the moon. So Canada is committed, the Canadian Space Agency has committed a lot of resources to making sure that Canada is part of the big Return to the Moon initiative. And so we are part of that, and we have a couple of missions in the works that will be part of Canada's contributions to returning to the moon. Excuse me, just taking a sip of water here. So I mentioned that some of the work that we do in Manitoba, we are fortunate in Manitoba that there's a lot of interesting geology here, and we do field work at a number of these sites, and some of them are shown here. This is a slide from a road trip that I had with a number of NASA scientists a few years ago. So I'm just showing some of the places that we went. So just sort of working around from I guess right to left, West Hawk Lake. Everybody knows West Hawk Lake. It's an old impact crater, but unfortunately, besides the lake itself, there's just no exposed geology that would be useful for exploring impact craters. Everything good, I guess, has been scraped away by the glaciers, but it's still an interesting place to go. Up near Bessette, there are some abandoned gold mines, and we do work at those sites. Looking at, they've got some interesting geology. So these old gold mines, they produce a lot of waste rock, and there's some interesting chemistry that goes on in the waste rock that is relevant to Mars, because there's some geological similarities between these abandoned gold mines and some of the rock types that we're seeing on Mars. In the Interlake, there's a smaller impact crater called High Rock Lake, which I haven't really visited because there's a better example for us, which is the on the left there at Gibsonville or St. Martin. There we have a much larger impact crater, and it's conveniently located, 2.5 hours away from Winnipeg, so we can go there on day trips or extended trips. And so that's about the size of Jezero crater on Mars. There are some geological similarities between Gibsonville and Jezero crater, so that's become a really big focus for us in terms of doing work at Mars analog sites. A couple others on the left-hand side there. There's a place called East German Creek, which is just north of Swan River. It's an area where you have active artesian wells or springs bubbling up at the surface. And again, that's a good analog for exploring the possibility of springs on Mars. Mafeking Quarry is located just a little bit. It's a similar kind of environment. So Mafeking and East German give us the opportunity to explore one type of Mars analog site. And then the 3 circles that are shown there are places that we actually just went to, did a road trip on Tuesday and Wednesday to look at some other possible analog sites. And so there is the lowermost circle there is Grand Rapids. Yeah, it's an area where you have really beautifully preserved fossils of microbial life that date back to about 250, 300 million years ago. So we're just starting to explore that site. And that's a good one because if we're looking for life on Mars, it will probably be microbial life, fossilized. So the Grand Rapids site is one that we're just starting to really get interested in. And then as part of the road trip, we went to Clearwater Lake by the Paw. and it is similar to the Grand Rapids site. So we've got a couple of different sites that we can explore. And then up around Flin Flon, there's some sites up there where you have what are called paleosolve, which are very old rocks that were exposed to the atmosphere and then started to break down. And those are of interest because they're extremely old, almost 2 billion years old. And so the conditions that they were exposed to was very low oxygen concentration. And so it has similarities in terms of its environment to Mars because of the very low oxygen content at the time that they formed is similar to the very low oxygen content on Mars in the present day. So yeah, I always thought Manitoba was kind of geologically boring, but when you poke around long enough, you find things that are interesting and useful. So we're kind of building up the number of sites where we can do field work that will help us in our exploration of Mars. Just to get oriented, here's a quick little geological map of the crater around Lake St. Martin. And you can see all those dotted lines in the upper part here. That just shows sort of different I guess, rock types within the crater. And so there's some interesting geology, there's some interesting biology as well that goes on there. So this is a great site because it is reasonably close to Winnipeg. And so we often take trips up there and test various scientific instruments at this site to see how they might be useful for Mars. Here's a couple of pictures from the site, just a comparison. The picture on the upper right is obviously Earth. The picture on the lower left is Mars. The Burns Formation on Mars and the St. Martin crater, there are similar rock types here. So by exploring our terrestrial site, we can get some insights into how these layered rocks in Meridiani Planum might have formed. And so, the advantage, of course, of working on a site on Earth is that we can go there, we can see it in person, and then we can explore it with rover type missions. And that helps us figure out how best to explore similar kinds of environments on Mars. Here's, again, a sort of a side-by-side comparison. So on the right, we have an image of an interesting and sort of still intriguing surface of a rock. And we don't understand how these textures form here. It's all kind of rubbly, but you can see that there are sort of these linear features in here where crystals might have eroded out from the rock. And on the left is a picture of a similar looking rock up at Gypsumville, St. Martin. And so again, by studying these rocks in the field and in the laboratory, we can hopefully get some insights into what caused these kinds of rocks to form on the Earth, and maybe a similar process went on Mars. Another interesting thing, here's a picture of one of these gypsum boulders from, and we've broken it open, and you can see, hopefully from the picture, you can see there's a blue and green layer that runs from kind of upper left towards lower right. And so this is a layer of cyanobacteria. So in other words, microbes that are living in the rock, right? So the surface of the rock is towards the right, the bright part. So these are microbial colonies that are living in the rock a couple of centimeters below the surface, and they're in what I call their happy place, which means that by not living on the surface, they are protected from the environment, from the extreme cold. They are protected from UV radiation, and yet they're deep enough in the rock that rainwater can percolate, and enough water gets in there to allow these microbes to actually live and metabolize and thrive. And so again, we're using these kind of investigations to help us figure out, okay, when we go to Mars and we're in a similar geological environment, how would we be able to detect these critters that live in the rocks but don't live on the surface of the rocks? So we can explore things like what scientific instruments could we use to determine their presence, and how far, for instance, how far into a rock would we have to drill or break apart to find evidence of these things? Here's another side-by-side example. So on the left, we have a picture of a rock. You can see it's all pebbly, and these are bits that were carried by running water on Mars. And on the right, we have a similar scaled image from Gibsonville, formed by a similar process. So by studying these, this rock type is called a conglomerate. So by studying the conglomerates at Gibsonville, we can determine how they formed. And we know that they absolutely form in running water. And so we can use the information that we get from Gibsonville to say something about how these similar rocks formed on Mars. So we can constrain things like how deep was the water that transported these pebbles? How fast was it flowing? How far did it flow? These are all things that you can infer from understanding how these rock types form on the Earth, and then transfer that knowledge to understand how they formed on Mars. Another site is called East German Creek, and I pointed that out on the map. It's just north of Swan River, and it has a number of springs, water springs that are still flowing. And our thought here is that these springs, because they've been flowing for thousands of years. And so our thought is that because you can have these long-lived springs on the Earth, these could possibly be places on Mars where life could have persisted for the longest possible time. As long as you have a source of water, you have the possibility of life existing. And so the site at East German Creek, I'll show a picture in a second, again, contains microbial life. It contains some interesting rock types that are formed by the interaction of microbes with the water that's coming out of the springs. So there's a lot of interesting features here. Here is an example, just again, a sort of a side-by-side comparison. On the upper right is East German Creek, an aerial view. On the left is a similar scaled image from Mars, and the red arrow points to places where we think the water, that these are old springs that are no longer flowing, but the arrows point to places where we think, the red arrow points to a place where we think the water was coming up to the surface. On the ground in the bottom right, here's a picture of some of the springs. You can see that it's, at first glance, it's very Mars-like, right? Things are red, and that's from iron that's dissolved in the water that precipitates and colors everything red. And then you can see the green patches to the right part of the image, and that's these mats of cyanobacteria or algae that kind of coat and thrive in these spring environments. So again, we've got a place where we can explore the geology and the biology, which will hopefully give us insights into how would we look for similar features on Mars. Here's another view of East German Creek. And again, this is one of the springs. So the gray patches in the middle here are where water is bubbling up to the surface. But most of the pond itself is covered by these mats of cyanobacteria or algae, plus a lot of red staining of these mats of algae. Here's a close-up of what we call the white brains. Sometimes descriptive terms are the best. And these are mats of the cyanobacteria or algae, and they have they are coated with salt and another mineral, gypsum. And so we think that the coating is probably produced by the microbes, and it's kind of like we think of it in terms of sunscreen, that by precipitating these minerals on top, it protects the underlying microbes from the harsh environments of Manitoba, especially Manitoba winters. Another thing on the creek is we find these things that we call carpet, and you can see here there's a piece of this material folded over. So what it is, it's cyanobacteria, it's these blue-green algae, and then they're covered on top by sediments. And the sediment, the mud essentially that coats these mats, provides protection from the environment. And when you have a heavy rainstorm, the water will rush through and break apart these carpets. So you get all kinds of interesting textures where they're folded over, they're curled up. So you just get this torn up appearance. Excuse me. And the interest here is because some investigators have seen similar kinds of features on Mars. And the top picture here is an image from Curiosity and Gale Crater showing what is interpreted in the bottom here as fragments of these carpet-like growths. We haven't detected any sign of organic molecules in these things, but just the comparison of the imagery is kind of suggestive that maybe what we're seeing here is on Mars could be relevant to what we're seeing at East German Creek. Okay, I jumped the slide a little bit, but here we are. So another aspect of what we've done is we're working with folks at other universities, engineering departments, and building prototype rovers. And so our involvement in these projects is to test the rovers under realistic conditions. So here we have a small rover that we built with in collaboration with a couple of companies and a couple of universities. And you can see it's, it looks like a rover. It's got 6 wheels. It's got an arm and a camera on it. And here's a picture where we're testing it at an analog site in Quebec. So that's another aspect of what we do is testing rovers under realistic conditions, equipping them with different instruments, and seeing how we can improve our ability to scientifically explore Mars and other planetary surfaces. Just threw this one in here real quick. This is a view towards the back of the Perseverance rover, and we've been involved in the mission since this was conceived back in when was it, 2013. And so we actually are flying one of the calibration targets on the rover is a sample that we provided to the mission. And it's the last target on the right in the second row. And so if you take a look at pictures of the rover where it's pointing towards the back, you'll see this plate that contains a bunch of different geological samples that are used to calibrate the scientific instruments. So we're kind of proud of the fact that we got to fly a Canadian rock sample to Mars. We've also been involved with the rover in terms of testing all these calibration targets. These are used to make sure that your scientific instruments are working properly. And so we have been able to test these targets in our lab because we have the chambers that we can expose them to Mars surface conditions and see if they would be suitable, if they would survive being on Mars for extended periods of time. So we're heavily involved with the Perseverance rover. In terms of atmospheric dust, I mentioned before, and I won't touch on this too much, but we're trying to look at we're trying to determine what is the composition of dust in the Mars atmosphere. And that's mostly to understand what drives Mars climate, what drives Mars weather, and also whether there is anything present in the Mars atmosphere that could be indicative of biology. We know, for instance, there's a number of minerals on Earth that really require biology, the presence of biology to form. And so those are the minerals that we're kind of targeting in our investigations. So again, our approach is to exploring the atmosphere of Mars. We can analyze materials, minerals of interest that we hope are present in the Mars atmosphere, and then analyze the data that's coming from the European Space Agency ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, and search the data that the orbiter is providing in the context of, are we seeing anything, any minerals, anything that's indicative of biology on Mars. The bottom left picture I like. It's a spacecraft view of the surface, and it's of a dust devil that is that's spiraling and traveling across the surface. I mentioned OSIRIS-REx. This is an asteroid sample return mission, and the spacecraft launched in 2016. It acquired a sample last year, and it's on its long journey back to Earth, with a return in September 2023. So our involvement here is twofold. One thing is that Canada gets 4% of the sample that will be brought back by the spacecraft. And this, the picture, upper picture here is the sampling mechanism. I won't go into the details, but you can see in the dark part, you can see there's a lot of not contrast, but there's a lot of light and dark patches. And that's an indication that the mission was successful in picking up samples of the asteroid. And we think it's probably on the order of maybe 600 grams to 1,500 grams. So, you know, a pound to a couple of pounds of material. So that's pretty good. And as I mentioned, because Canada is part of the mission, we will get 4% of the sample. So you can do the math to figure out how much that is. The two pictures on the bottom are taken by the spacecraft, just showing that the sampler, this donut shaped thing, was successfully stowed within the spacecraft for return to Earth. And our role again in this mission is that we are part of the larger team that will analyze the sample that's brought back. And then from that, we'll obviously be able to address science questions about what kind of organic chemistry goes on asteroids. And then we'll be able to allocate samples to the international community. So it's nice that we're going to get a first crack at looking at the samples before they are available for scientists worldwide. Another, so now switching gears, so now I'm going to talk about a couple of other spacecraft missions. And of course, you know, we're scientists, we love acronyms. So one mission that we're involved in is called VMMO. That is a CubeSat mission that is going to look for ice at the lunar poles. If you follow lunar exploration at all, you know that there's a lot of interest in trying to find ice on the moon, which would help support long-term human bases. And so this is a CubeSat that we're building here in Canada, hopefully to launch in 2024, 2025. And it is designed specifically to look for ice that is located in the pole, at the poles of the moon, in these permanently shadowed regions. Because we think if the ice is protected from sunlight, then it should be able to persist for a long period of time. Another spacecraft mission we're working on with colleagues at the University of Manitoba is called IRIS. It is a small CubeSat again, and here's a view of it. It's designed to expose a number of rocks and minerals to the space environment because we want to understand what the space environment does to different kinds of rocks and minerals when they're just sitting on a surface of an asteroid where there's no atmosphere, there's no protection from the space environment. So here's the view of the spacecraft on the left and on the right. And at the lower part here, these darkish panels are solar panels that will provide power to the spacecraft. In the middle here, you can see this inclined plate with a bunch of circles on it. That's where our samples will sit. Excuse me, and it's open to the space environment. So there's nothing protecting these samples from the space environment. And then around the periphery, we have cameras that are mounted to monitor what happens to these samples over the lifetime of the mission. So we've got a lot going on, sometimes too much. And just sort of to summarize some of the highlights here, we're involved in a number of missions for Mars exploration. We are part of the Curiosity rover team. We are part of the Perseverance rover team. We are part of the European Space Agency ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter. And we are also on the European Space Agency's Rosalind Franklin rover. So in 2 years, a year and a half's time, we'll have another mission on Mars that we will be part of. So that's pretty exciting. In terms of asteroid exploration, as I mentioned, we are part of the OSIRIS-REx mission, and that will give us access to pristine samples of an asteroid in 2023. So we're really looking forward to that. And then we also have two missions that we are leading or majorly involved in, and that's the VMMO, which stands for the Volatiles and Mineralogy Moon Orbiter. And then IRIS is the other CubeSat that I talked about that's going to expose rock and mineral samples to the environment in space. So it's a busy slate of activities. And you know, like I said, I'm always kind of both proud and amazed that Winnipeg, and in particular the University of Winnipeg, that we are involved in this range of international activities. And so I think that may be it. Good, it's about a half an hour.
Well, Ed, that's just been fascinating. So I guess we've got time. If you're okay, we can open up for some questions.
Absolutely.
All right. So just unmute yourself on your mic if you want to ask the question, or if you're a little shy and you just want to type it in the chat, and I'll ask the question to Ed for you. So go ahead.
Dr. Cloutis. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was curious about the cyanobacteria. Are they anaerobic, and if there is bacteria on Mars, how would you expect them to be related? Like what type of bacteria or microbial life forms would you expect?
Very good question. The cyanobacteria themselves are aerobic, and so they live in oxygen, but at the same site, just below the layer where the cyanobacteria are, there's also anaerobic. Within this very small environment, we get both. I think on Mars, we're probably going to expect anaerobic bacteria. And so we're not so much, I'm not a biologist, number one, but I'm not so much concerned about what species are present at our analog sites. I'm more interested in what do they look like? What geological or what sort of traces or evidence do they leave behind? And so, yeah, so I'm trying to be sort of agnostic, I guess, about biology. I'm looking more like, what do they leave behind? If they're there, what do they look like? Or if they're dead, what evidence or what traces have they left behind?
Thank you.
Yeah. And I
Sylvia?
often regret that I'm not a biologist. Okay.
Hello, Dr. Cloutis. Nice to see you back again. I remember your presentation about OSIRIS-REx a few years ago. So
Right.
good
Yes.
to see you
Hi.
back. And
good to see you too.
Yeah, and to hear that you're always involved in this super interesting projects. How cool is that? And I was just wondering, I mean, you know, with all this talk that we hear about, you know, for example, Elon Musk doing all of these, you know, Mars and sending things to the moon, is there a concern from the scientific community about possible contamination of these places, or not that big a deal?
There's different opinions, right? I am of the opinion that it's not a big deal. I think Mars is such a hostile environment that two things. Number one, there's no way, if you're going to send people to Mars, there's no way you can sterilize everything that goes to Mars, right? So we are going to contaminate Mars no matter how careful we are, okay? But I also, Mars is a very hostile environment. So even if we contaminate it, I think the contamination will stay, it won't spread across the planet. I don't think it'll spread very far. So yeah, wherever people go, you will contaminate it, but I think it'll stay confined in a very small area. And I think, you know, we really don't have any I guess, any controls over what private companies do. If Elon Musk wants to go to Mars and, you know, his spaceship is totally contaminated, I don't think there's anything that governments of the United Nations can do to stop that kind of activity. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of depressing to hear, but like you said, you know, so far there is no regulations. It doesn't seem to be, so.
Yeah, you know, there's voluntary regulations, but you know, nobody has to really follow them. You know, one of the things that we do, like, you know, let's say with Perseverance rover or any rover, you cannot decontaminate it 100%. There will be things that are living on the rover no matter what you do. So one of the things that we do is when we're building the rover, we do what's called contamination knowledge. So in other words, we try to figure out what is still living on the rover that we just can't decontaminate. And then that way, when we send it to Mars and it starts to explain something, we'll be able to look at what it found and say, that's probably contamination because we know what's on the spacecraft, right? So that's a way to try to minimize, try to minimize the effect of contamination. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So if we can't send totally clean spacecraft to Mars, at least we can know what it is that we're sending, what are the contaminants that are going to Mars.
And
Yeah.
then roll those out. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Judy has a question.
Hey.
Hi, thanks so much for giving the talk today. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
I wonder, you're looking using spectroscopy tools or spectrometry, and I expect that you're collaborating with other people who are looking at the magnetic signal or something like that. Are you expecting particular collections of elements like iron deposition by something or copper, cyanobacteria, or are there particular things that you're like think that would be like finding a eureka moment that from a signal?
That is an excellent question, and that is absolutely right. So I didn't, I can't get into the details, but as an example, since you asked, we're going to look for molecules or compounds or minerals that are indicative of life. So one example is we look for a class of minerals called borates, which contain boron as part of their structure. And again, not a biologist, but biologists tell me that, boron is one of those, it's a catalyst for producing ADP or something. So, so we're looking for yes, compounds or elements that are indicative of biology. Yeah. So, let's say we find boron right on Mars. It doesn't necessarily indicate that there's biology, but it does say that here's one of the essential elements for biology. So it gets us closer to the answer. Yeah.
Right. So when you're recruiting students to your work, are you looking for a mixture of microbiologists and geologists or spectrometry people?
As much as possible. Yeah.
And do you take volunteers?
I know where this is going. I can tell. You can't fool me.
It's okay. It wouldn't have to be me, but I bet there would be people who would be really interested in that tour of the sites you did in Manitoba.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That would be something we could do. Yeah. I guess now we're getting into fall, but it could, and COVID, of course, but it could be something that we could think about doing next year through the RASC. Why not?
Yeah. It would be fascinating, actually.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to spend 3 days on the road with me, but yeah. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, the students enjoy the road trip. So yeah, why not? Sure, that's something definitely to think about for next year. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Certainly in the chat, some interest is definitely going there. And I believe Danielle has a question.
Sure.
Hi, thank you. I really enjoyed your talk.
Thanks.
I have a question about kind of how common sites like the ones that are here in Manitoba are elsewhere in the world. Is there something special about the Manitoba history that make these sites special? Or can we find kind of Mars analog sites scattered over the globe?
There are Mars analog sites scattered over the globe. It kind of depends on what aspect of Mars you're looking for. And for me, finding places like Gibsonville and East German Creek was really convenient, because if I'm going to take a bunch of students out and we're going to, test a rover, we're going to test some science instruments, it's a hell of a lot easier to hop in a car, drive a couple hours, 3 hours to Gibsonville, do what we got to do, rather than take them to Australia or something. Like to go, but it's just, I can do a lot more with the same amount of money here in Manitoba. Yeah. So yeah, fortunate that we have a number of these sites that we can goof around at. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Ed, I have a question for you. When
Sure.
you showed the rock with the fossil or with the bacteria growing in it, the question I got for you is, like, have you got examples of where it fossilizes so you'll actually know that it was there, at least if it was there?
Let me just bring up the picture here. This guy, yeah. Sorry. So yeah, what was your question about that?
Well, like in your picture, you've got the nice color of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but let's just say that they didn't survive. Like, I don't imagine the color would stay there. Like, does that bacteria leave some kind of
Yeah.
indication that like fossilize or what?
Well, we did some experiments. So we brought some of these samples back to the lab, and we put them in our Mars environment chamber for a couple of months. And so we were kind of, hammering them with ultraviolet and carbon dioxide, like the total Mars experience for them. And we were monitoring them with our spectrometers, and it turns out that you kill them pretty good, but somehow some of the chlorinoid molecules that are in there, they give them the color, they seem to survive reasonably well. And again, I mean, that's only a short-term experiment, so we don't know, what would happen over millions of years. They would probably break down gradually. But I guess one of the things we found is that if you are on Mars and you're in a place, let's say you're in a place where there was a recent landslide, and you're exposing fresh rocks, then your odds of finding something biological go up a lot. And so that's part of what we're doing on Mars is we know that the environment of Mars is nasty, and it will kill things and it will degrade organic molecules. So when we are driving around on the surface, we're always looking for evidence of fresh material, and that's where we would really focus our efforts. Yeah, something that's been recently exposed, again, by landslides or by erosion, whatever it is. So yeah, we know that the fresher the material is, the better the chances of finding evidence of past or present life.
Just on Earth, though, Ed, this is Judy again.
Yeah.
You can see pigment molecules long after bacteria or other things die. Yep. And toward Dennis's question about fossilized bacteria, of course, you could see those with electron microscopy and various other things that are now pretty standard in places. I mean, it takes a special way of using the electron microscope. And that's why the collaboration is so fabulous when you get involved in those missions, right? Because everybody gets a teeny little bit, but you can do a ton with that teeny little bit.
Yeah. So, one of the things that with our trip up to Grand Rapids and the Paw, one of the things we're looking at is a rock type that's called stromatolites. I'll spell that out in the chat thing here. If my fat fingers work, there we go. And so stromatolites are these bacterial mats, and they kind of form these mound or dome structures. And so if you just go, Google whatever, you will see pictures of these things. And so the ones that we look at up in Grand Rapids and the Paw, it's a dimpled rock, right? And so you've got these domes that are like between the size of an egg and the size of a dinner plate. And this is a result of bacteria growing, getting covered with sediments, the bacteria growing again, and you just build up these layers, layer after layer, and they form these dome structures. And so that's a very high priority thing for us, because these stromatolites we found stromatolites that are like 3 billion years old. And so we look at the ones in Grand Rapids, which are beautifully preserved, and we're using what we see on those to look for, to guide us in terms of, to guide our search for microbial life on Mars. Because again, like you said, Judy, it'd be nice to fly a scanning electron microscope to Mars, but then you have to figure out, what rock am I going to take and grind and look at it. And so at least stromatolites are big enough that we'll see them in pictures from the surface. And so we're hoping that if there is microbial life on Mars, it formed these communities, it formed these dome structures, and that's what we're looking for. And so we're using, we're studying these stromatolites in the lab right now with all the instruments. We have essentially lab versions of all the instruments that are flying on Perseverance. And so we're throwing all the instruments at it to see what it is that would make them recognizable and uniquely recognizable as being biological. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So again, we're lucky that we have these things here in Manitoba. It's a bit of a drive to Grand Rapids, but what are you going to do? Yeah. We drove up there and we loaded up the car and brought back, a couple of 100 pounds of samples of these things, so we don't have to make the drive all the time.
Are there any more questions for Ed? Well, Ed, I just, on behalf of the RASC Winnipeg Center, I just really want to thank you for, it was a really enlightening presentation you gave us. And just again, it's always surprising how much scientific research is going on in our backyard we don't even know about, that's leading edge and exciting. And it's, one of the goals of the RASC is to get that information out to the public and let people know. And again, I certainly hope that we can take you up on a road trip, because I know there's a large segment of the club that's interested in things like this, and it would be very, very fascinating to be able to do that. So again, on behalf of the society, I thank you.
Yeah, let me just a couple of things. Thanks everyone for listening in on this. The other thing about a road trip is, we could look at a couple of options. If we just want to go, to Gypsumville, where there's a lot of cool stuff going on, that would be a day trip, a long day trip, but a day trip. And then if we want to go to some of the other sites that I showed, we could look at a 2 or 3. So, we've got a couple of options that we can consider. The other thing too is that the sites, I'm like a lot of geologists, I'm pretty lazy. So, the sites are easy to get to. I don't want to hike for hours through the forest to get to a site, right? So these things are they're pretty easy to get to, which appeals to a lazy slob like me. So just something else to keep in mind.
Right on. Thank you very much, Ed.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
And I'd like to invite you to stay on if you like, because we're just moving into a social function now.
Okay.
Where everybody's allowed to just kind of chat and maybe pull out a drink if they've got one and just have a good time tonight. So again, thank you, Ed. And
sounds good.
I'll say good night to everyone, and thank you all for coming. And please stay on and enjoy the rest of the evening with our social. Good night. So Ed, are you going to take over now? The other Ed.
The other Ed, I was going to say.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm here. I'm the host for just the Zoom call, so I'll just stay on for the socialization for just to spend some time here with anybody that wants to go off. If you'd like to turn your camera on, and we can have a little time here for socializing. Anybody go?
There's a 1 acre lot. Pretty straightforward bungalow.
Ed, thanks again for your presentation. And one thing that just occurred to me, Ed, is that, so tell me of how a university in Manitoba gets to have the role that you're having. Like, how did it all transpire to be what it transpired to be?
Boy, I wish I knew. It's been a long time. Like I've been at U of Winnipeg since 1996, and I came in with a PhD in planetary stuff. So I just was looking for opportunities to kind of continue to do this. And so
I just
kind of fortuitous with the Canadian Space Agency, getting little grants and then just kind of building up. And I'd done my master's in the States, so I had some contacts there with folks that are involved in NASA missions. And it's been I'm like a 25-year overnight success, I guess is the way to put it. It took a long time, but now we're at the point where we are, like I said, we're involved in so many missions right now, and it's I think it's just hard work and perseverance, not the rover, the other kind of perseverance. And yeah, we've got a good reputation. We have international connections, and so when missions come up, we are often the go-to group, because we have some unique facilities like our environment chambers. And we've got a lot of so I was talking about taking science instruments in the field. We've got a lot of field portable versions of instruments that are on the rovers. So we can take the equipment to the site rather than bring the site to the laboratory. So yeah, I think it's just a lot of factors, but yeah, it has taken years to kind of get to this level of success. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You're a very humble man. I mean, I know it must have taken a tremendous amount of work on your part to make it happen, and kudos to you and your team.
Thanks. Yeah.
I was just going to comment to the group. I had a nightmare that the banjo bowl was tonight, and then I realized it's actually tomorrow night. Because if it was tonight, we wouldn't, we would have had like 2 people show up for this meeting. So, anyway,
I think it's in the afternoon. Didn't you say that, Gord?
Yeah, 3 o'clock.
yeah.
Just looking at the chat here, Jay, you mentioned shatter cones up around Gibsonville. Have you had experience with that? I think Jay's still around. There he is. Yeah.
He's just unmuting.
Yeah, I'm still here. I was looking at the web and noticed some pictures of shatter cones that were collected up there.
I'm going to turn this off.
Yeah, I think I might have seen the same paper you saw. And so that got me thinking about so there's a quarry, if you go up Highway 6, just like maybe 2-3 kilometers before the turnoff to Gibsonville on the right there that you can see from the road. And so went and checked that out on Tuesday, actually, part of our road trip. And it looks like they might be shatter cones. So I grabbed a bunch of samples. I'm going to send them to a colleague of mine at University of Western Ontario, who's a shatter cone expert, and just ask him to kind of confirm that they are. He doesn't think they are. And the only reason he doesn't think is because that quarry is right on the edge of the crater. And usually shatter cones are more towards the middle where the higher pressures exist. But we don't know exactly the size of the Gibsonville crater anyway, so it's possible that they are the real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like, the paper is fairly old, I think. So I don't know how much they backed up the identification with further research.
Yeah, if it's probably the same one I'm thinking of. I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah. So I've only seen the one paper that claimed that there are shatter cones up there. Yeah, the crater is big enough that you should, but it's just kind of in the wrong location. It should be more towards the center of the crater, and I've been to the center of the crater. So the center. So with the the whole thing with the Lake St. Martin community and how they had to relocate. So they moved it away from the shore of Lake St. Martin, and now they're located sort of east of Gibsonville. So they put the new houses right in the area where we used to go collecting what are called melt rocks, right? Which are rocks that were in the center of the crater. The impact was so severe that it melted the rocks, and then they recrystallized. So they're kind of like, they look like volcanic rocks. They're like bubbly and that sort of thing. And so I haven't been to that area to see whether building of the new community has kind of destroyed the outcrops where we used to collect stuff. I'm guessing it's probably not there, probably covered in nice sod, but won't know till I get there. Yeah, I just haven't had a chance to go in and see what is actually still there. Yeah.
Well, we have a half a dozen meteorite hunters in the club, so you probably get some buy-in if you wanted to do a trip up there and needed some company.
Yeah. Probably no meteorites there, right? That was big and so long ago that, yeah, probably not. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 400 or whatever, 200 million years will bury a lot of meteorites.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other structures sounded interesting. Shatter cones would be interesting, and also your melted rock. So take you along so you can tell us what's what.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, you know how that is, right? The Interlake's all covered in bush and stuff, but there's still there are a few spots where you can see what's actually going on up there. So yeah, one of them is this quarry. There's also a gravel pit just south of Gibsonville, where you can see some of the conglomerates. You remember the jumbled up rocks that are there, and then just north of Gibsonville is all the gypsum mines, right? And so that we think that the gypsum is stuff that was deposited after the crater formed. So the theory is that when the crater happened at a time when you had this big inland sea, right? So Manitoba was covered in like shallow seas. And then when the crater, when the impact happened, it happened right at the edge of this inland sea. And so you know, smashed down, made this big hole, then the water rushed in, right? And so the water would have brought in all that conglomerate, all that jumbled up rock that I showed. And then when the water evaporated, it would have left gypsum behind. And so all the gypsum deposits that are there, and there's like kilometers of it, is probably something that resulted from the water in the crater evaporating. So, you know, when you think about that, that's a kind of another connection to Mars, is that Mars was wet, now it's dry. Jezero crater had water that came into it. The water is no longer there. On gypsum yet, but we expect that we probably will at some point. It's probably been covered by windblown dust. And so, you know, St. Martin could turn out to be a really good analog site for really understanding Jezero craters. So kind of watching to see what the mission's up to. And, you know, it'll give us ideas on where to go in Gypsumville and how to look at, you know, with fresh eyes to look at some of the features that are there. But yeah, there's just so much bush and so much glacial debris on top of it that you just don't, it doesn't look like a crater. You're just driving on, you know, it's flat land. It's like, well, we're driving over the rim of the crater. You can't tell because everything has been planed flat by the glaciers. So you got to find the places where people have dug, pretty much, you know, basically people have dug beneath that surface crap to show the interesting stuff. Yeah.
It's pretty obvious when you look at the geological map of Manitoba, though, that there's a big round thing sitting right there.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know you don't need any more work, but NSERC has that promo science program. And my bet is Lake St. Martin schools or, you know, folks would be fascinating to work with on that kind of an angle into science. You know, just observing the land that they live on would be really cool.
Yeah. You said it right in your first sentence, if I had time, right?
Yeah. I know. It just sort of grows on you, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I can never say no to stuff, right? So I gotta, at some point I gotta learn to say no to things. I'm trying, but I'm not being very successful.
Yeah, but look at it, got you to the asteroids.
Well, there you go, right? And you know, I got the worst thing for me would be to be sitting around being bored, right? So God knows I have more than enough on my plate. So that I'm happiest that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been retired for 3 years now, or a little bit more, and I have yet to find bored, really. It's and I still got a PhD defense coming up, so it's it's craziness.
Last student.
Yeah, last student.
Is it in biology per chance? I could use an astrobiologist.
Yeah, she's moving muscle cells, studying muscle cell migration, but using a thing called a microfluidics chip, which you put under a microscope and watch in real time over days and days.
Yep.
And you can control the conditions really well. It's really interesting work, and she's done a lot. She's sort of a biotech person.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice work.
Yeah, we just found this thing a couple of months ago. It's this microfluidics thing. It's like the size of a USB stick.
Right.
And you can run, I don't know all the details, but you run fluid through it and it will do some kind of RNA or DNA sequencing thing.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah. And so we're thinking, you know, since this thing is so damn tiny, we're thinking about flying something like this to Mars, right? Like it's kind of specific to DNA and RNA. That's fine.
But it doesn't have to be.
No, that's right. So it's something we could fly to Mars because it's so small.
Yeah.
The hard part would be, you know, taking your sample and dissolving it in, I don't know, water or some kind of liquid, and then putting it into the chip and then doing all the readout stuff that they have to do. So we just bought one of these like last week. I haven't even taken it out of the box yet to see what it looks like, but we're thinking about, it comes down to the question of is life on Mars DNA, RNA based, right? If it is, then these things would probably work pretty well. If it isn't, who knows? It's not a big expense, right, to fly one of these things. So we're thinking, maybe in a future mission, give it a shot. So we're just going to start playing with it now.
Yeah, I can't quite remember the volume of the chips we're using, but it's something like 60 nanoliters.
Oh, it's next to nothing. Yeah.
Tiny, and it
Yeah.
fills many chambers, and there's many different designs you can use to make the flow a certain, slow it right down, and then you could have it, see if it hybridizes with your test samples.
Yeah.
All kinds
Yeah.
of stuff. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, somebody else should take over and talk here. It's all biology for the physicists.
And the geologist.
I was just going to say it. I'm sure glad you didn't say no to presenting tonight. That was great because.
I do it so infrequently. Yeah, and I think the last time I did it, I probably was talking about Osiris Rex. I think I might have done one
That's
about.
right.
Okay.
Did I do one about Curiosity, or maybe Curiosity or Perseverance, or Mars rovers in general? I can't remember, but yeah. But yeah, I'm always happy to do these things, for sure. If in a couple of years' time when Osiris Rex gets here, I can do one about that. If something really cool comes out of Perseverance, we could definitely do something about that. So yeah.
Okay. Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, my background is actually more physics and engineering oriented, but I had a question about that sample. Like you had the close up, like the zoom view of that sample plate. What are those samples for? Is that like sort of comparison between an Earth sample and what you're seeing on Mars? Is that what that's used for?
Kind of, yeah. So, for anybody that's, even if you've done like first year chemistry, that you have to run blanks or standards, right? To get results you can believe. This is exactly that, right? You fly in it, you build an instrument, you test the hell out of it on Earth, then you fly to Mars. It's got, vibration on launch, and then it's got the vacuum of space, then it's got the landing. It's going through hell, right? And so to know that your instrument is working properly, we fly these calibration standards for pretty much all the instruments. And so the purpose of that is fly things that we know will survive the trip and everything else. And then we will point the camera, the spectrometer, whatever it is, at the calibration target, and then at the thing that we're interested in looking at on the surface. So yeah, so it's that kind of thing. It's just, it's again, like first year chemistry, good lab techniques is really what it is. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you. We've talked a lot of science here. We're not really doing a lot of socializing, but normally what these meetings have been, like before the pandemic, we had these Boston pizza things.
I went to one of those. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's not as good as going to the real thing, but hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll be able to go back.
Absolutely. That would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Right beside the church property. Oops, I guess I'm online here.
Anybody else have anything else?
Good by me. I'm going to say goodbye.
Okay. I think I'm staying here because I'm just filling in for the host on this. So I think if I leave, the whole thing might end. I don't know.
I think so.
We're down to 13 of us.
Yeah.
Oh, that many? Yeah. Who else is there, folks?
Mike.
Gord, Michelle.
Wing is here. Gord.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, a few are dropping off. So
I guess we've run out of questions.
yeah. Well, I guess if that's it, if nobody has anything else, maybe I'll end the meeting. So
yep.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Cloutis. I'm calling you Dr. Cloutis because I don't want to call you Ed because there's the old.
It's going to be confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they say the two Eds are better than one, but that's
absolutely.
Anyway, thank you again. This has been great. Have a great evening, everyone, and thanks for attending. I will send a thing out about the strategic plan. I'm sure that you all have bated breath waiting for the chance to read that. So, anyway, have a great evening, everyone. See you later.
Okay. Bye all.
Bye.